I'm Michael James. I'm talking with Dick Simpson. We're talking Chicago state and national politics. Let's go to national politics for a minute.
Well, even before we do that, Mike, one of the big victories it looks like that happened this week is 138,000 students in colleges, community colleges, universities, private colleges, and public colleges in the state of Illinois were set to lose all of their grants and scholarships from the state of Illinois as of December.
These are called MAP grants?
These are called MAP grants. They're about $2,500 a semester. They make the difference between whether a student could go to school or not. At UIC, we have 6,000 of the MAP grant students, to give you an idea of the size and scope of it. This week, the legislative leaders and Pat Quinn announced an agreement, although it has not yet become law, to go ahead and fund the MAP grants for next year. If that holds in 2 weeks at the last of the veto session, and they actually reallocate the budget, that will mean a lot of students. Maybe we might have lost 60 or 70,000 students permanently from higher education, simply not being able to pay the money. So I think the students won a great victory. They went down and lobbied on Thursday. They've had rallies all the last month. Both newspapers have begun to cover it, the Tribune and the Sun-Times. Sun-Times had a front-page story last Sunday. That's really a really important victory because it affects the future of our state. We talk about being a global economy, but I'm not sure how you have a global economy if you have an illiterate workforce. So it's a very important step.
How did the students end up turning out for this? Was this purely a material interest on the part of students? Was it were there progressive groups and people influencing this movement? How did it come to be that we all of a sudden saw so much activism in this area on a statewide issue from students?
Well, as Zelensky used to say, it's always good to appeal to self-interest. This is really their pocketbook and it's their future. But it's interesting, student government at places like UIC was at the lead. Governor Quinn held rallies at several major universities in which not only the universities were involved, but the public high schools. The Chicago public schools had official spokesmen there because the fear was if we permanently cut these grants, we're not only cutting this year's students, we're cutting future students who are in high school now. They have no hope. They're not going to go to college if we don't have these grants. And it's simply, well-hearted people, individuals around the state. I wrote a series of op-eds that appeared in neighborhood papers over this weekend. The major papers editorialized, but it was really mobilizing the students and them actually learning to talk to their legislators and sort of saying, if you want our vote next year, you better do it for us now.
Was it a universal vote on the part of state legislators, or was there opposition?
No one was willing to come out and say we ought to cut the student grants. There was no one making speeches on the floor. But it was the general condition of the state budget that we talked about earlier with $12 billion grant. What happened? The legislature agreed to pass a budget that only funded half of the student need. And they did it because of the general budget gap. But stealing pennies from students to fund your state is not the way to go.
Dick Simpson, you're a professor of political science at the University of Illinois, Chicago. What is your take on the attitude of students right now, both at UIC and around the state? We have a situation where certainly many students turned out to back Obama. Things have calmed down or gone down or are in flux or in motion. Where are students at today? What kind of issues are they concerned about? What are you seeing at UIC?
Well, I can tell you in our own department that we went from about 1,300 students interested in political science classes to 1,550 this semester. Part of that's the Obama phenomena. Part of it is interest in world events that begin to impinge on them. I like to think it's because we have brilliant professors and we draw them in, but in truth,
at least one.
But in truth, it's students are more willing to be interested in politics than they were, say, 7 or 8 years ago. And this goes in cycles. I still think the general trend on campus is for quite extreme liberalism on social issues, gay marriage, the rights of minorities, rights of women, very strong interest on the part of students on all sort of liberal issues on social questions. But it is not true on economics. They're still primarily fearful about whether they're going to have a job when they get out of school. And they pretty much buy the conservative line of capitalism, at least until this recession. And I think they're probably, like everyone, reconsidering their thoughts about that now. But that really hasn't yet changed.
Do you actually see the recession? What kind of transformation are you hoping to see, or do you actually, as a political scientist, see happening, not only locally but globally?
Well, globally, it's very severe. I study the country of Sierra Leone and spend a good bit of time there recently, and am in touch weekly with Sierra Leoneans in Sierra Leone. And I can tell you, for instance, their currency, which was already in a terrible shape, it was 3,000 leones to the dollar. I transferred some money to help a student go to college there the other day, and it was 3,500 leones to the dollar. That is, they're losing value very quickly. Countries like Sierra Leone that have been through terrible civil wars and are now rebuilding are finding it very hard in the recession because the cost of everything, like rice, has gone up dramatically. We see the recession here in the United States in very severe ways, and unemployment's the most obvious, but the effect around the world is really quite devastating. It means less ability to move towards democracy and development in all parts of the world, as long as they're held back by the recession.
So students are generally a little bit more conservative on financial issues. They don't see socialism as an option. There's not a...
No, there's no song. There are individual groups on campus, and we certainly have them, as do most universities. But they tend to be small clubs of people who've read the literature and have now become convinced. There is no great appeal. If you carried a flag that said socialism across the campus, not many would march behind you. If, on the other hand, you attack the bankers or you attack the insurance interests, everyone would agree that the bankers have done a disservice to the country, that the health insurance industry is causing great harm to the country. And on that, you can get a lot of agreement.